Hey everyone, Rho here. Before I begin today, I just wanted to say I hope you're all keeping safe and well out there. We've got another COVID variant on the rise over here in the UK, and the winter cold is most definitely settling in. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you're all staying safe and looking after yourself over the winter months. But on to today, and today we begin our What If Primarch Return series. Discussions that will be sprinkled in every once in a while, where we discuss what could happen if a certain loyalist Primarch were to return next. And today we kick off with the Wolf King himself, Leman Russ. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we will be discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay, now I've had a few people asking how the possibility of the unremembered empire being exposed could affect the return of Lionel Johnson, and this added wrinkle to the narrative most definitely adds an element of intriguing curiosity. However, considering we've discussed the Lion a fair amount recently, I thought we'd give the other brothers some discussion on the matter as well, because while it feels like the Lion would be next, the reality is none of us really know. It could be none of them, or it could be any of them. So while we will get around to the Lion, what if Leman Russ returned next? Well, Russ, as we know, departed for the Eye of Terror at some period following the heresy, during the years known as the Scouring, leaving only his promise of returning for the days known as the Wolf Time. And while not known conclusively, it certainly appears, to me at least, that he was given a vision by the Emperor that set him upon his way. And it could in some way or another be related to Constantine Valdor's own disappearance. Now, how exactly Russ will return is obviously nothing but guesswork at this moment in time, as he's really one of the few Primarchs, along with his brother Rogel Dawn, that we've received absolutely no hints in regards to him whatsoever. Vulcan was seen during the War of the Beast. Corax has been spotted whooping Lorgar from pillar to post, and even the White Scars have entered into the webway to find Jagatai. But Russ, we've seen absolutely nothing. Now, the current day Space Wolves have been desperately seeking sign of his return since the Great Rift arrived and the galaxy fell into chaos. For surely if there were ever to be a Wolf Time, then this must be it. But thus far they have been nothing but disappointed, receiving absolutely no sign of their missing Primarch. So in talking about how he can return, well, it's anyone's guess. I will say I personally do not expect it to be tied to the possible Valdor talk that's been going on. While I think their quests may be linked in some way, I don't think it's side-by-side cooperation, more that Russ departed for the Eye of Terror and Valdor's prosecuting the Emperor's plans in his own way, that they may be tied together in the larger picture, but they are not hand in hand. Now, my best guess at the moment would be for the recent burning of Nurgle's garden by the Emperor to play a part. Russ left for the Eye of Terror, fact, and he is rumoured to be searching for something known only as the Tree of Life, which I think most people would assume has something to do with the Garden of Nurgle, in one way or another at least. So for me, I'd love for the burning of Nurgle's garden to have had some effect on Russ's future return. whether the literal burning itself, or him hearing the echo of Guilliman's voice resounding out across the warp, which you would have expected any Primarch within the warp to have heard, such as Russ and Corax. So let's say Russ has been lost hacking his way in a maze of endless undergrowth, slaying greater demon after greater demon, as Nurgle attempts to keep the Primarch trapped in a never-ending journey and battle, only for Russ to hear his brother's voice, and Russ has since been fighting his way out of the garden ever since. When Russ escapes back into the material world, he could well appear at Guilliman's side. It would certainly have to be a grand moment for a Primarch's return. However, for me, when it comes to Russ, he will undoubtedly appear by his son's side. Whether guided by his father, or from prophecy of a Stormcaller vision, Russ will appear in their time of need, at the point of a cataclysmic battle deciding the fate of their chapter. It's the only way the Wolf King can return, and you wouldn't be too shocked to see it involving Magnus in some way, the most devastating invasion of Fenris yet. Now, Leman Russ has returned. What would he make of the state of the galaxy and the Imperium? Well, as any Primarch who returns, he will be given the state of events by his sons. He'll be informed of his 10,000-year absence, of the fall of Cadia, the explosion of the Great Rift, the Imperium being beset by enemies everywhere, and world after world falling to the ruinous powers. He'll then also be told of Guilliman's return and the rise of the Primaris, the successor chapters founded in his name. Now, Russ would obviously be taken aback upon seeing the Primaris for himself, and I personally believe Russ would accept them. He would commend Grimnar on accepting them into the chapter, and in accepting the wider bloodline of his kin, binding them into the spirit of Fenris. He would be happy they were made to prove themselves and have passed the test of true sons of Fenris, and I honestly believe that that would be enough for him. As long as they have proved themselves true sons of Fenris, then they would have proved themselves true sons of Russ. However, behind the Wolf King mask, he is also smart enough to know that this was probably an attempt at fixing his bloodline, so he would make sure to lay that threat clear to Guilliman whenever they were reunited. And it's that reunion that would undoubtedly come next. Unlike a lot of his fellow brothers, I don't think Russ would feel the need to rush straight to Terra. The Emperor has more often than not come to him in one vision or another, and Russ knows you only hear from the Emperor when he wants to talk to you. The fact that Terra still stands and the Emperor still lives would be all that matters to him. So instead, if Russ hadn't arrived by Guilliman's side, I think he would seek out his brother first. Now, we're not blessed with much Guilliman and Russ material over the years, but we know enough to say that Guilliman and Russ's relationship, while perhaps not the best of friends, was never particularly bad. Russ just found Guilliman incredibly boring, and so you'd expect Guilliman for his part viewed his brother equally as over the top. Guilliman, however, did include Russ in his dauntless few, his selection of Primarchs he could win any war in fighting beside, so there is a high level of respect there. Russ, while undoubtedly knowing he could take Guilliman in a fight, would also concede Guilliman is the far better choice for Lord Commander. I also believe that Russ would not be swayed by the poor opinion of Guilliman by his new age sons. Yes, the scouring led to bitter arguments between the two, but the simple fact is Russ did concede to it, and that's in his own words. Yes, the Space Wolves never exactly abided by the rules, but Russ no longer wanted to fight his brothers. So even in name at least, the depleted Space Wolves Legion did become a chapter. Now, whilst this reunion may not be the outpouring of brotherly love, if say Vulcan or Korax returned instead, I strongly think it would be completely amicable. Guilliman has longed for a brother to return, since the very beginning of his awakening within this new nightmare. And even if it were Russ, rather than say Rogel Dawn, I strongly think Guilliman would be elated. Even if yes, a little wary of what Russ might say or do. Guilliman did even joke about Russ punching him to the ground for not laughing at his jokes in the last Dark Imperium outing, so there does remain some brotherly affection there. Leman Russ was the second found after Horus, and as such he's always seemingly come across as a bit of a big brother in many situations, such as when he tried to get Angron to see the error of his ways. When you combine this with his executioner role, Russ has always felt like he can do whatever he wants, and that the Emperor is simply happy for him to do it. And in truth, he's not wrong. The keys for me would be that Russ would be happy to leave Guilliman doing his Lord Commander thing, as long as he doesn't try telling him what to do. He would most likely work with Guilliman in regards to certain things, but in true Russ nature, would also do whatever he saw fit. So it would be a delicate balance for Guilliman to manage, having to pick his arguments carefully with his brother. And I don't think this would be anything new for Rabute. He would know exactly when and how to do it. He wouldn't always win them, but in truth he would probably welcome having to perform the charade again, just knowing he actually has one of his brothers back and on his side. To me, it wouldn't be all clean sailing between the two though, and I would absolutely expect some form of threat to Guilliman in regards to the Primaris. If Russ did view it as an attempt at fixing his bloodline, well then he would make it abundantly clear to Guilliman that if he ever tries anything like that again, then the Wolves will once more perform their executioner role. Now, in truth, would Russ truly want to kill Guilliman? No, of course he wouldn't. As always with Russ, it's a calculated mask he wears, but he would still need to make it perfectly clear to his brother that he overstepped the mark, and he absolutely should not do it again. Now, when it comes to the return of Russ, Guilliman in all likelihood has already got provisional plans in his mind on what he would do if each particular brother returned. He might not think it's likely, but knowing Guilliman, he'd have the plans anyway. So he probably has a particular idea in mind for Russ too. And a lot of that would simply revolve around unleashing or pointing Russ in a particular direction. If Magnus's building of his so-called new kingdom is still going ahead, then honestly, does anyone expect Russ to go anywhere else? If Russ were to return, then a grudge match against Magnus would make too much sense. Especially once Russ is told of Magnus's invasions of Fenris over the years. The anger of Russ would be absolute, and thus the wrath of the Wolf King and his wolves would be descending on Magnus's new kingdom in short order, which Guilliman would probably be very happy with, cancelling out a major scale threat located right in the middle of Imperium Sanctus. Rabute would probably even attempt to send help of his own, if not going himself, warning Russ of their demon brother's elevations. Now, whether or not Russ would accept that help is another question entirely. So, all in all, a return of Leman Russ may actually be one of the easier returns for Guilliman than anticipated. He may be warned or knocked on his ass for the Primaris experiment, but apart from that the two would most likely get along. Russ would probably not be interested in Guilliman's role as Lord Commander, having been used to it from the days of the Scouring, and feeling the role fits Guilliman's boring nature much more so than his own. Guilliman in turn would know the drill, largely leaving Russ to do what Russ does best, but with a few well-timed requests along the way, and regardless of anything else, he would be confident in knowing if he called for aid, then Russ would come. The Wolf King's first course of action surely would be that campaign against the Thousand Suns, bringing ruin to Magnus's attempted new kingdom. And after that, well, who knows? You'd expect that one to be a long-winding conflict at the very best. But what of the revelation of the unremembered Empire? How may that affect Russ's opinion of Guilliman? Well, honestly for me, I almost don't think Russ would be too surprised, simply remarking it down to Guilliman being Guilliman. And considering Russ himself was at Terra when Sanguinius arrived, I don't see how he could be angry, even more so when he himself left it. He was there and heard the words directly from Sanguinius himself, that the three brothers who were in Ultramar agreed it best that one legion make it through the Ruinstorm rather than none. Sanguinius made it, and he gave the ultimate sacrifice, while Russ returned to Terra too late. So honestly, I think it'd all be water under the bridge for Russ. And I don't think he'd give two hoots about Guilliman rebuilding the Ultramar of old either. Like I said, I really just think he'd see it as Guilliman being Guilliman. As long as he doesn't get ideas above his station, then Russ wouldn't be too bothered. The far bigger conundrum is, could Russ see the absolute you-know-what show the Imperium has become as evidence that the Legion should never have been disbanded, much like Guilliman himself has come to the realization. And well, that could be a very distinct possibility. However, again, I don't see him causing waves and reforming the Legion of old, combining all his successors back into the Space Wolves. Not for any fear of being reprimanded, more simply out of the fact he'd understand his son's loyalty and identity being tied to their chapters. These were never successor chapters torn from the Space Wolves. They are newly founded sons. While they are all sons of Russ, they are also very much so their own tribes. And Leman Russ would respect that. Yes, he'd probably unofficially command them as a legion, but he would not try to bring them within the Space Wolves. And in reality, that's not much different from what Guilliman himself is doing. So, what if Russ returned? Well, as we can see, I think it'd be nothing but good things for Guilliman and the Imperium. But as always guys, what do you think? What do you think would happen if Leman Russ returned? How do you think he would act when it comes to Guilliman and when he sees the state of the Imperium at large? As always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.